Hi, everyone. Welcome to our interview with Charter School Teacher of the Year, Jeremy White. I'm Rhonda Dillingham, Executive Director of the North Carolina Association for Public Charter Schools. And if you know me, you know I'm a champion for teachers. I taught for almost 20 years. So, Mr. Jeremy White, congratulations and thank you for joining us.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
It must be a thrill to be the Charter School Teacher of the Year. That means you're representing the thousands of teachers across the state who teach our students, and that must be really exciting for you.
It is. It is. It's kind of hard to take it all in, especially with everything that's been going on and as busy as we've been just in my school. I can only imagine everybody everywhere else, but it's been humbling and it's been an honor.
Well, let's talk about your path that brought you to teaching a little bit. So, can you tell us a little bit about what made you become a teacher and why kindergarten? You know, we don't see many men teaching kindergarten. So, I'm just so curious to hear about it.
Yes. So in 2008, I graduated Elon University with a degree in communications journalism, with all intentions of working for a video game publication and reviewing video games. I made it my life's work. I was going to play video games and review them forever. um, but during the '08 housing crisis, there really weren't a lot of writing jobs. So I ended up applying to teach in Japan, and applied to teach overseas in Japan to all different age groups. What ended up happening was I had wanted to go to Japan since I was 9, and this was a way to get there. I had never thought I'd actually be a teacher. I had worked in daycares before. I had helped out in church youth groups and things like that, but I never saw myself working with children for a living. So when I went over to Japan, it was on a year contract, and I thought I was only going to be there a year. Ended up staying for 5 years. Taught ages 3 all the way to high school, and then some adults. While I was there, I taught at a total of 9 different schools. 7 of them were public and 2 were private, and it was a great experience. And basically, when you go teach overseas, they don't expect you to stay over there as a career. So I thought to myself, okay, what can I do? What can I do when I come back to the States? And after I found my love and my why for teaching, I decided to come back to the States and get my master's of teaching elementary education. The reason I chose kindergarten is because when I was teaching in Japan, when you're teaching a foreign language to any age, you have to be very specific with your vocabulary. You have to be very particular with your vocabulary. You have to be it has to be, you got to boil things down. So I thought, okay, what grade would be most similar to my experience teaching a foreign language? And I came down to kindergarten. I did my student teaching in second grade, and realized that was even still a little more older than I wanted to go. So my first year was teaching kindergarten. I haven't looked back since.
Wow. You're right. We have some things in common. I always wanted to be a teacher, but when I was a teenager, I kind of resisted it and went in a different path. But through life circumstances, I actually came back to teaching, and turned out to be the right path for me. So a lot of us, it seems like, resisted at first, but that calling seems to get you, I think.
Yes, absolutely. My mother said she knew it since I was 15, working with some of the younger kids inside of in the youth group and at one of the churches. But I never saw it. But she knew for a fact. She knew it was going to happen, and she never pushed me on it, but she knew it was going to happen and eventually did. So
That's neat. And the other thing we have in common is living abroad. I lived in Germany for over 2 years, and I completely understand what you mean when you say when you're communicating with people of another language, you have to boil things down. And I think nothing really works on your communication skills more than when you're trying to actively think about how to make your point when you're speaking with somebody who doesn't speak your language as a first language. So I think that probably will benefit you very well in the kindergarten classroom, because you'll be really clear and concise in your instructions. And that's very important for teachers, I think. So, why Westlake Preparatory Academy? You know, we know that's part of Charter Schools USA. So, I'm sure everyone in that network must be really thrilled to have one of their teachers as the Charter School Teacher of the Year here in North Carolina. So, what's special about your school?
So, how I got there and what's special, I'll answer it in two different ways. So when I was trying to start a tutoring company, I was doing a lot of networking, and I was getting in touch with some other teachers that I had taught with. And one of my old vice principals said to me during this time, she said, "Well, if you ever are going to jump back into teaching," because I had taught for 3 years, and then I was trying to start this tutoring company. She said, "You know, a mutual friend of ours is taking over at Westlake, and they're going to be working at Westlake." I said, "Okay." So I went ahead and I decided, okay, I can still run my tutoring company, but I can also work at a school. And it was kind of that simple. It was just a mutual friend of an old coworker. And what I ended up experiencing was better than I could have imagined, because since we are so small, that can go one of two ways. Either you're so small that you all get on each other's nerves, or you're so small that you actually do create a lasting community and a good foundation. So during our first year, we were under the impression that we were going to be at a temporary location just for a year, and then we were going to be moving into our building as of last fall. That didn't happen, and we had to do one more year together in a temporary location. And it's been great because not only, I'm used to being in schools where I'm just around my kindergarten team and maybe seeing the first grade team because the schools are so big. What's great about Westlake is not only am I helping mentor teachers in other age groups, but they're also able to see what kindergarten looks like. I'm also able to see what the upper grades look like, because we're so small and connected. We're a very small but mighty school, and the personal relationships that I've been able to make with the staff and the relationships I've been able to make with the parents, year over year, have been really great. Because even though you know, we're moving into a bigger building next year, this whole family foundational piece that we have at Westlake is like nothing I've experienced before, and I'm really excited about it.
You know, you're talking about two really important things. I think that, well, and research has shown that it is beneficial for students when there's vertical alignment. And so, as a kindergarten teacher, you're able to understand what is expected of the students when they go to first grade, then second grade, and so on. And you have that very uh, close and rich relationship with those teachers, so you can really make a huge impact on your students and prepare them for what's to come. And then the second thing I heard you say is about relationships, and that your school feels like a family. You know, students need to feel safe. And whenever you have that kind of environment, then it just creates an atmosphere for them to be able to thrive. And I think that is really, really important. So, what's your favorite lesson to teach or concept to teach? What is the thing that gets you excited in your curriculum?
Writing. it I geek out with my kids with writing. I realize I've become a nerd with this, because when I first started teaching kindergarten in 2015, I had no idea how to teach writing to 5-year-olds. I had one of my mentors, our literacy facilitator at the time. She sat me down and said, "This is how you need to teach it," and it was very nuanced, and it's complex, and it's almost scientific in a way, to be able to teach a child who doesn't know how to read, doesn't have any phonological awareness, the basic concepts and principles of writing. And so I didn't realize it at the time, but my undergrad, being a journalism major, really set me up to be able to be an excellent kindergarten teacher. And I would even say if I taught first and second as well, I just really have a passion for teaching writing, because in my experience, the more that I get children to open up with their creativity with writing, to get them to understand their phonological awareness and their phonemes and the phonics, it helps reading. And then it also helps that that love for lifelong learning, wanting to go further. I have this great line that I always tell my kids because they say, "Well, Mr. White, I wrote 2 sentences, I'm done." I said, "You're done?" I said, "I seem to remember we said that great writers," and then the rest of the class say, "Keep writing." And I said, "I need to know more details. This is like ice cream. I can't just take one lick of the ice cream. I need more of it." And they get what happened last year. I had finally, it was my fourth year teaching kindergarten. And that was my fifth. But in my fourth year teaching kindergarten, it was almost as if I got to be that master kindergarten writer, teacher. And I created such a culture of writers in that room that I didn't expect, to the point where we had our curriculum resource teacher. She came in to observe me, and she says, "This is February of last year, so it's their 6 month in." She said, "They haven't even touched the picture yet." And I looked at her. I said, "That's because we're trying to get to first grade." And they said, she said, "Why haven't you drawn a picture yet?" And they told her, "Well, Miss Stevens, we're trying to get to first grade. First graders don't use pictures. We're trying to add more detail." And it's amazing because it creates such a community, because when we have our writers workshop and then we get together and talk about our writing, it's the efficacy that it brings the students, because they see their different levels. They see penmanship in different ways, they see details in different ways. And so I always lead with, "Okay, what do we like about this?" And they give each other feedback. And then I say, "Okay, what's one way we can make it better?" And usually it's the person who wrote, they're critiquing themselves. And they say, "Well, I could have it be more like such and such is writing. I could do this." And I said, "Yes, let's take that one thing and we're going to make it better." But what I've found is I can teach children to learn how to read, but that won't make them good writers. But I have never taught children how to write and they've been terrible readers. So I just really, when I talk about something that I really love to teach, because it involves so much, it involves, you have to think of how many phonemes you hear. So it involves math, it involves phonological awareness, it involves critical thinking, it involves decoding. It's just, there's so much that goes with it. And especially in this era of being digital all the time, I want to make sure that my students still can find their love for learning with just a pencil and a paper.
Mhm. It sounds like you have created that safe learning environment for your students, and that's what causes them to be able to critique themselves and not be afraid of it, which will serve them well as they advance into the upper grades. I think that's wonderful. So you are making an impact on your students. I wonder, did you have any teachers who stand out that made an impact on you?
Yes. So when I was younger, because my father's job moved around a lot, I was moving every 6 months. And one of the only things that was consistent is when we would move to different states, my mom still had us at the same school, or at the same schools that we were in those states, that had the same curriculum across states. And I will never forget a teacher named Mrs. Chin. And actually, she and I recently reconnected a couple weeks ago. She was just letting me know how proud she was of me because she heard about the news. And I told her, I said, every time I think about, because she was very patient with me. I wasn't, I wasn't a problem child in school, but I talked a lot. I like to talk. That's end up becoming a teacher. You talk a lot. And so I always think about her when I have a student that just likes to talk a lot. They're not making a poor choice, they're just talking a lot. They have things to tell you. I always take a step back and think, okay, if Miss Chin could handle me talking all day and she could still motivate me to learn, I can take a step back and have patience with my own students and understand they just have things to tell me. But she was such a great teacher for me, because she allowed me to fully be myself in my learning. And she didn't take any of my creativity away. But she kept me motivated. But the biggest thing was that she met me where I was. And I don't think I realized that's what was happening until I became a teacher and I started meeting children where they were. So there's a few more that I have in my mind, but she was the main one, because that was my second, third, and fourth grade year that I had her. It was a very, very small school, so I looped with her.
Well, hats off to Mrs. Shin and the teachers like her. She sounds wonderful. You know, it's awesome that you're making such an impact on your students. I wonder though, you're an African American male teaching kindergarten. I wonder if you have any thoughts on what we could do to attract more young people to teaching, and especially African American males to even elementary school. Do you have any thoughts about that?
So I think it starts um, with a perception. Perception's reality. It starts with the perception, and I think that the perception for the longest time, and includes me when I was younger, is we did when we were younger and we were in school, we didn't see black males in the classroom, especially in elementary school. That wasn't the norm. If we saw black males, it was in some role of authority, possibly a principal or a coach, or if we watched TV, it was a celebrity or an athlete. And I think the simplest answer is it's going to take a generation for that to to actually seem normal. So I think the way to attract it more is I remember reading an article a couple of years ago, and it said how beneficial it is for children of all races to see a African American male in the classroom at young ages of kindergarten, first and second, because for the longest time I had thought, okay, yes, representation matters. Some of my some of my black children need to see me because I look like them. But the article went further. It said, no, every race needs to be able to see a black male in a lower grade because it's just not seen. So to have that respect and understanding that, they can exist in that arena does so much for them as they grow up. And then now they're not expecting to just box in an African American male into a particular category, such as athlete, celebrity, or authoritative figure. And it does so much on the psyche and the developmental stages of children to be able to see that. But I think it's just going to be a perception shift, because I do know, even not even just being an African American male, but being a male in a kindergarten classroom, the perception that I've always gotten, and every person, a lot of people have asked me this, and especially some of my own family members, they said, okay, so you're teaching kindergarten, but the goal is to be a principal, right? Are you going to get your admin license? So the idea needs to shift, where if we see males in the classroom, we don't automatically assume that they're going to try for administration. That the idea of being a career teacher in the classroom as a male needs to be normalized.
Mhm.
And there's people who know a whole lot more than me about budgeting and things like that, and there needs to be ways for there to be, pay increases so that we can stay in the classroom, so we're not told we were doing so well. Okay, so here's your pay increase, but you have to get out of the classroom. It kind of seems a little, it seems a little paradoxical to me, but if we just start with the perception and normalizing that, okay, you're a male in the classroom in elementary school, and that's good enough, and in fact that's welcomed,
Mhm.
then I think we will start to see a shift in society's viewpoints of what the benefits of that will actually have.
Mhm. It needs to be honored for sure. That's you're right about that. Teaching is challenging any year, but this year has been particularly challenging with the pandemic and remote instruction and the fear of being sick and all of that. So I wonder, what effect has it had on you, and has there been anything you've done to mediate the challenges?
So we were in a very unique situation to where we were so small that we were actually able to start in person from day one. We gave our parents three different options of whether they wanted to come in sometimes, not at all, or full time. And it was just thinking about that. It was okay. At the end of the day, we're doing what's best for kids. How am I going to be able to do this? Because I've never done this before. And so in the beginning, it was a task because it was all new to everybody. Um, and I know that in the beginning, it was almost like teaching in my very first year. I was just trying to survive. It wasn't so much I was trying to get everything right. It was I'm trying to learn how to, because I was teaching and still am teaching. I have kids over Zoom. I have kids in the classroom. I have children that are socially distanced in the gym. And there was a whole thing. How do I juggle all this while at the end of the day, give myself some grace? Because even though it was October and we're about to end our first quarter, I remember what my kids in October were doing before the pandemic. And when some of my kids weren't able to do that in October, I'm beating myself up. I'm not giving myself enough grace. So one of the ways I've learned to kind of accommodate and be not so hard on myself is to say, look, you are doing the absolute best you can. You're trying to meet these kids where they're at. You're still in the middle of a pandemic. Give yourself a little grace. See where they've been, and just acknowledge how far they've grown in the midst of everything. And I know one part of this that has helped out a whole lot, um, which seems obvious, but I know not every single teacher gets this luxury. My parents have been extremely understanding this year. It was There was a point in time where I actually had to take over two kindergarten classes because one of our employees had resigned, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to have 40 something emails a day. They're going to be so out of control, worried about. They were very understanding. If they had questions, I answered them. They were very thankful. And the the part that's made it easier is, like I said in the beginning, just this community, and being so small, that's helped out a lot. Um, and so, of course, we use different technologies to make sure that the kids in the at home can see the kids in school. And I kind of try to do group work where I have them with an iPad with the kids at home, and we do asynchronous and synchronous and all those things that you've heard this year. But really, it's come down to the way I've been able to get through it is I've given myself more grace than I would have in years past, because I know where my heart's been at. And a lot of teachers have had to learn how to do that as well, because we know where our heart's at. We want to grow these kids. But at the same time, we have to kind of take what we can get. And so we don't burn ourselves out too.
Exactly.
So,
I'm sure you're extending that same grace to lots of people, your students, your parents, your colleagues, and that sort of thing. So it really is, it's pertinent that you would do that for yourself too. And I see another quality in you, Mr. White, that I find is really important. And you see it in a lot of really great teachers, and that is the ability to reflect and to think about your practice and what you're doing that needs to be improved or might need some grace. So I think that that's wonderful. I have one more question for you. So
all right.
teachers teach and we design lessons, but the pretty much any teacher I've ever talked to would agree that students teach us as well. And that's one of the most gratifying aspects of being a teacher. So I wonder, what is the greatest lesson your students have taught you?
Hmm. I have to go back to my second year teaching. Um, small backstory just for context. I had a child who, trying to keep it as general as possible, who needed a bit more extra attention. And I had a group of 23 kindergartners, no TA. And it was the first time I had ever had a child like this in my classroom that needed extra attention. And I remember that my first year teaching, I was trying to micromanage everything. I didn't realize that's what I was doing. I'm not type A, but I was trying to micro. I felt as if they're five. I need to make sure they know what they're doing at all times. I need to make sure that there's not all chaos at all times. Um, the greatest thing I learned that year, and what my students have continually taught me, is that I can trust them. I can trust them to be part of the community. I don't have to be the only voice in the community. And I know that at times when I've seen some coworkers, especially coworkers that are their first time teaching kindergarten, first or second, they're losing their minds, and because they're not listening and hearing and feeling the vibes of the students, that is like, no, you've given us what you need to give us, now trust us to do something with it. And they have literally taught me that if I hold them to certain expectations, they may not hit it, but they're going to try as much as all get out to get up there.
Mm,
And they will try to help each other as well. So the greatest thing they taught me is that if I trust them and I can show them that I trust them with everything, with how we line up, things we do during lunchtime. Like there have been times in my classroom where I haven't said a word. I've just looked at a child and they're thinking, why is he looking at me? And then the rest of the 18 children are, he's obviously looking at you because there's trash on the ground, and you know we don't put trash on the ground, and it's been 100 days of school. Like they say everything I would have ended up saying, but because it's coming from their peers,
mhm,
it's going in differently. And so the biggest thing that they taught me is to just trust them, because I've gone my whole career here in the States and not had a teaching assistant. I have to trust them to be my teaching assistants at times. And so there are literally times where they will come up to me and they'll say, I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm working one on one with a group or one on one with somebody else, and I can't answer 18 different questions. So what do? I stop the class, I call on a certain student, and I said, hey, I need you to do me a favor. They don't understand this. Do you remember what we talked about yesterday? Yes, I do. Okay, I need you to walk them through this. And it's those times that I wish there were other teachers that were flies on the wall, or other administrators or other parents that were flies on the wall. Your kids can do this. And it's like, if I have 5 year olds that are able to have a community of learners that are all teaching each other, and sometimes they teach the content better than I teach it because they don't have the vocabulary, so they just say it as they would understand it.
mhm.
It almost makes me think when I see other teachers of upper grades in places I used to teach or overseas, when they say, I just can't get a handle on my class. I'm like, I need you to come watch my 5 year olds do what you're saying that your fifth graders can't. Because I promise you, if you trust your fifth graders, yes, they might all be different levels, but they all have something to contribute to the class and the overall classroom culture and their own self-efficacy. Somewhere along the line, they had a teacher that said, I don't trust you anymore. And that's why they're back into a negative spiral. But uh, it's it's just amazing because I've learned how to um, let go. And I know that, and I don't know if you are any sort of Marvel buff or the movies and things like that. But one of my biggest aha moments is I went to go see the movie Doctor Strange. It came out a long time, about 4 or 5 years ago. And the entire premise of the movie was his hands weren't working anymore because he had gotten in an accident. And the whole idea of the movie was he wanted to get them fixed. And the lesson he had to learn was, if I want control, I have to give up control. You don't tell a river which way to move. You just lay back and let it take you where it's going to take you. And you're either okay with that or you're not. So I have this metaphor of kindergarten classroom being this controlled chaos river that's just flowing down this mountain, unabated, and it's not going to stop for anybody. So I can either choose to get on and figure out how to manage it, or I can try to stop the river from flowing. So which one am I going to choose? And obviously I'm going to choose to go with it. And I know every single year, all of my classes they've all presented different challenges, but when I've allowed myself to trust them, they take themselves in the direction they're supposed to go. And then I just kind of lead from behind and make it all work so that they reach their potential that year.
Mm. Well, what you're talking about is culture. And your every classroom has a culture, every school has a culture, and you have designed it in a way that helps students feel empowered, and I'm sure that that's why they're doing such a great job learning this year. And I can certainly see why you were chosen to be the charter school teacher of the year. I've never even met you, and I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you very
Coming from
much.
somebody who did this for nearly 20 years, I'm just so happy to know that there's someone like you that is taking up the reins and doing such a phenomenal job. So I'd like to congratulate you as well as Westlake Prep and Charter Schools USA as an organization. Congratulations. I'm so impressed, and I hope that we do get a chance to meet sometime in the near future.
Yes, absolutely. Very much looking forward to it.
And thank you for taking the time to talk with me today. I wish you the best and stay in touch with me. Let me know how things are going. Okay.
Definitely will. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.